Hey everyone, Marin from Indie Birth here, out on a walk. I might have to keep walking, as many are familiar with. I have some pesky canines that sometimes won't sit still, so we'll see how this goes. But I wanted to do another video in the series that Margot started yesterday, Myths about Independent Midwives, or unlicensed midwives, or license-free midwives, or pick your term. There are as many terms as there are as many myths. And I can't wait to get into one of those with you in a couple of minutes. But first, wanting to share just some personal things that people might find interesting, and just in the spirit of sharing women to women. I have my first moon cycle after Cove's birth. She's 9 months, and I'm pretty excited. I have some close friends here that reminded me how special it is, especially to bleed at the full moon. So I went from, kind of feeling like, ugh, really already, to feeling excited about it and just impressed with my body. That's that. So I will be trying to take some more time for myself this morning, if I don't fall down this hill. I usually go to the gym on several days a week, but I'm going to honor my body and not put it through a workout this morning while I'm actively bleeding. And that's a change, and just a subtle, simple way to respect what my body's doing. So thanks for listening. The other personal thing that's interesting, or maybe not really interesting, but special to me, is that 17 years ago, my waters opened with my first baby. She wasn't born for 2 days from now, in a pretty long and drawn-out hospital induction. But nevertheless, she was born, she was beautiful, she is beautiful, and she will be 17 in 2 days. And I could cry about that. I think between bleeding and having a daughter that will be 17, that's could almost bring on the tears this morning. She's just so beautiful and smart and strong. Sniff. So thanks for letting me share. I might also share more about her birth 17 years ago, as it was amazing and pivotal in my life, and my path would not have been this path without that experience. I'm so grateful to her for being the first soul that came into our lives. I know, 17, Anyway, it really gives you perspective, though, when your kids get this old, in a happy and sad way. Life is short, and honestly, that realization is one of the driving forces behind me doing what I do and not being apologetic. We get this life, and it's usually pretty short in the scheme of things. So, gosh darn it, I'm going to do what I want in the way that I want to do it. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to be scared. I'm not going to have excuses. And so I think that's such a valid perspective, as you get older. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm really supposed to be talking about one of the myths behind being an independent midwife. And so I want to share the first thing that came in for me around that. Like Margot said, we're going to do a week of these myths and videos. And part of it is just because, things have come up, especially for Margot in her own life around this. And we feel like we're not talking about this enough. And then secondly, since we have enrollment for the school going on, we're enrolling for Indie Birth Midwifery School. Or actually, we're not enrolling, we're accepting applications. I keep saying that wrong. We're accepting applications till December 10th. And so I think it's also a relevant conversation as people are looking into the school and having questions. And, these fears, these weird things start to surface because you're essentially looking at doing something that goes against the status quo. And so, like most things, there's going to be myths and legends. We're the most mysterious creatures, us independent midwives. So on one hand, it's a huge compliment. People are in this mysterious space of what is it we do? And it's not so cool and not so mysterious when a lot of that becomes gossip. And Margot talked a little bit on her video about how that's maybe feeling, hey, no way. feeling for her and her community, and the horizontal violence that goes along with that. So I think she'll talk more about that. Today, I want to talk about the myth of the fact that independent midwives are often seen as unskilled. And, not all, I'm definitely going to say not all, but many licensed midwives will take every opportunity to devalue the care of an independent midwife. Now, there's so many ways I could go with this. The first is, I'm not sure that your average licensed midwife really has any idea how someone like me conducts their practice. So it's just based on hearsay, perhaps, or it's just based on sort of lies and untruths that feel like they're self-serving. So in other words, the licensed provider feels like, ho hum, I have my box of rules and regulations that make me safe. And because that person doesn't follow them, they must be unsafe. Jeez. Not everybody believes them, and I'll get into that too. So I don't know if it's like just this misunderstanding or if it's a convenient way to feature yourself, if you're a licensed provider, as the superior option. So let's talk about some concrete examples. I've been an independent midwife in my community for close to a decade already. So, I guess I'd say it's getting easier. The truth is, I'm just more confident and I have a bubble. And if people talk, I don't really care. And I don't hear it as much as I used to. But, there certainly are sort of consistent things that I have heard over the years. And one is, those unlicensed midwives, they do unassisted births. Okay, what does that mean? I don't attend unassisted births because by virtue of me being there, they would not be unassisted. But it's a way to scare women and say, oh God, you don't want her. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't have any tools. When that couldn't be farther from the truth. So if those people were to ask, or, maybe somehow they were a fly on the wall at a birth I attended, they would see that it's midwifery. And maybe in a way that they don't recognize because they do things differently. And you know what? That's okay. But not answering to the state, of course, doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. And it doesn't mean that you just sit in a corner and you knit and you cross your fingers and hope everything works out. But if I had to focus on the one silly myth of the day, that would be it. That people love to say that that's what we do, that we do nothing in a negative way, and that people should not be hiring that, and they should not be paying for that. Heavens, no. So, those of you that do resonate, of course, you may have been there yourself, maybe as a woman who, has lived this, or as a midwife. But it's just so silly. It's just so silly. And really what we need to do is just have these conversations about our differences. And, a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever, I would have said that wasn't going to happen. But it's kind of happening here. I don't want to sound like I hate anyone. I am so thrilled that in my community, we've begun developing relationships, us independent people, with a couple licensed midwives in town. I'm absolutely thrilled. This has never happened here before. And it took, someone really negative leaving altogether for some new energy to come in. And these ladies are wonderful. And I'm really excited to get to know them and talk about some of these things. And I feel like I'll receive more insight into, how to talk about these things and how for us all to be more transparent That doesn't mean lying. That's the opposite of lying. Be more transparent with women, because there isn't a better. Like, that's another myth, that I'm going to not do today. But there is no better choice. There are choices, and women can know honestly how those look without being lied to, without being talked down to, because they're smarter than that. Which brings me to my wind-up spiel before I head home. Women are smarter than that. So ultimately, if midwives are going to do this horizontal violence thing and talk nastily about each other and be unprofessional, it does suck. It really does suck. It's hurtful. It creates an energy in a community that is not supportive of women or home birth. You have to recognize that we're still the minority, right? So who cares if we're unlicensed, licensed? No one cares really but us. No one cares. So the doctors of the hospital probably hate all midwives, right? So let's be sisters. Not because we need to fight anything, but because that makes a cohesive community about all of this. Which leads me to the last point, which is I just am going to choose to trust women on this one. It depends on the day. I'll be totally honest with you. Like, some days it seems like a hurtful thing if you hear about it, or if I hear about it in another community, it's like bleh. But the women that want to believe that stuff or are willing to believe it also just aren't ready to own their responsibility, to own their births. And it's a convenient excuse, They hear something like, oh, that midwife attends unassisted births. They're like, oh, well, I don't want that. They're not curious. And so there is where we can do work. That's where education can come in. Not to change people's minds, but to slowly open them to the possibilities that are really available to them. So, on a positive note, I always find it so fun when someone comes into my little office and they're really bold and confident. And maybe they want to talk about some of those things. They're like, hey, I heard that you attend only unassisted births. Is that true? And I'm like, awesome. Here you are, a real person. Let's have a chat. Let me hear your questions. So women are smart. When they're ready to see what there is to see, nothing can stop them. So then we all look like fools, midwives, I mean. We just look like fools, fighting amongst each other, acting like there's competition when there's truly not. Each woman has a midwife that will be right for her, should she choose, and vice versa. So it's the silliest thing. And if there's any lesson in it, at least from my perspective, it's to gain more self-trust and confidence in what we do, in ourselves, So the outer world is just going to reflect to us our insecurities. So how can we trust ourselves more? How can we practice midwifery in more integrity? All of these are great goals. And if that's what these myths propel us into doing, then so be it. It's a time of growth and expansion. And our school's a great example of that. People all over the world want to do this thing. So love is always stronger. That's my kind of corny way to end this, but I really believe it. Love is always stronger. We don't have to participate in the nonsense. Focus on the women and what they want, and loving them and taking care of them, supporting them in the best ways we know how. And everything else falls away because you just don't have time for that shit. That's what it is. You just don't have time for it. So that's my sermon on a walk. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening as I pace along here. If you have questions or you have thoughts, we would love to hear them. We're going to continue this all week. So let us have it. Let us hear it. Send us your own ideas or myths if there's something you want us to cover that you've seen in your community or experienced. Obviously, we're just kind of doing what's coming up for us. But let's talk about these things. Let's get them out in the open. There's no more hiding. There's no more shame. There's no more need to act or feel secondary. All options are valid. All options are equal in the biggest picture, because they're all, something that is right for some person. So that is my final thought. Have a beautiful day, as Henna is about to eye a cat here, or has spied a cat. It is beautiful here in Sedona. I'm going to enjoy the sun and fall, and I hope you do the same. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.